do you feel like it sort of crosses a line, no pun intended, crossing, um, where somebody can say this is not healthy for me or right for me, and then extending that to say nobody should do it? You feel like that is kind of the dividing point for you?
Well, let me tell you the first thing I have an issue with, okay? Then we'll get to that. First thing I have an issue with is this. A lot of people say the Spirit of God revealed it to me. Like, okay, I understand, totally understand. I get that. I understand what that means in spiritual theological shorthand. I get it. Here's my issue is the Spirit of God, with all the issues that we have happening in our world today, wants to center around renouncing and denouncing mainly Black fraternities and sororities. That's the thing the Spirit of God is communicating to you about.
Hmm. Hmm.
Of all the things that are happening in our world, of all the things, and this is me being straight with you. I want us to think. I want us to have critical thinking as believers. I want us as Black Christians to take deep care around how we project our thoughts, specifically around God and how God informs our theological, spiritual, cultural practice. Are you telling me that the Spirit of God is most concerned with you denouncing and renouncing a fraternity or sorority? This is the thing?
Wow.
This is the hill? Of all the things that are happening in society, of how rights are being stripped away from us summarily, of how our children are being targeted and treated as less than. This is the thing? The thing
You're
is
saying
a fraternity or a sorority?
right
Are we
in
saying
this.
legitimately that this is what God is most concerned with? And this is the hill you must die on. That just right there, Jemar, strikes me as very strange in an election year where all kinds of things. This is strange for me, Jemar.
Why now? Why this time? In the spirit of this age, this is what the Spirit of God is telling Black people. I
Now,
mean, you
go
know,
ahead.
yeah, for me, it is, well, yeah, speaking in the theological terminology of, the Spirit of God told me this, that, the other. Nobody's saying that's not true. I think we're asking, is that the movement we all need to make? Is that the
So
direction
this
we all need to go?
so this gets into to the second part and the first question that you asked me, which is there are liberties here. And I think one of the things that has been frustrating for me as I've grown up in Black Christian spaces is how often we will universalize our own view and our own convictions on liberties.
Hmm.
And there are some things that we all should not do, right? We know them, they're explicit throughout scripture. There's some things that are anti-God and anti-gospel. And there are some things that are anti-God and anti-gospel that we haven't been taught as anti-God and anti-gospel, right? So, for example, when was the last time you heard a sermon series on greed,
Mm-hmm.
right? Although that is anti-God, anti-gospel, right? We don't hear a lot about that, right? Anti-Christ. When was the last time you heard a sermon series on, being addicted to food? Well, that's not something that
Mm.
we talk very much about, right? In our culture, not very something we talk very much about in our churches. So I do acknowledge that some things we haven't necessarily been taught. But here's the thing though. There are some things that are just up to us. And I feel like there is a continual movement to get our view of convictional theology from white-led evangelical sources, which by nature often take choice away from us in terms of liberty,
Wow.
and tell us and tell us what we should or shouldn't do, and to say, you know what? If there's even a question about it, we're gonna make it sin.
Mm. Mm.
If there's even a question of liberty, if there's even a modicum of freedom around it, let's just call it sin just to be safe.
Wow.
Let's just call it sin just so, because what we are most afraid of, and this is where I think some of it gets into kind of an anti-gospel view. So I think some of us feel as though what is keeping us is us, not the grace of God.
Hmm.
So what keeps us is the grace of God and the power of the Spirit. What keeps us is not our white knuckling, our convictional stances, our hard lines. That's not what keeps us. What keeps us is the same grace that saved us.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so rather than trusting in that grace to lead and guide us towards the truth that we need, we just draw hard lines and think that's going to save us. We think those convictions are what keeps us. And I think it's been very dangerous to watch. Historically, this does track. How many times have you heard alcohol is of the devil just because? I have a struggle with alcohol, so alcohol is of the devil. I feel a certain way. I get addicted to the feeling of getting a tattoo, so nobody should have one.
Mm-hmm.
I started thinking all these thoughts and having nightmares as a result of watching a movie. And as a result, nobody should watch rated R movies or horror movies or whatever it may be. And where do we as believers get the right to step in? Where do we get the right to step in and universalize all of these convictional liberties that we have ourselves for ourselves? And they get to tell everybody else they're walking in error. That just seems very dangerous to me, Jemar.